What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host,
Emmanuel Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. All right, what's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here as always with my brother from another mother, Mr. Emmanuel Pani. What's up, E?
My brother, so good to see you. It's been a little minute, so I'm excited to be back with you. Man, life has been good. We leave for Italy next Tuesday for a month, and it's crazy how many things you have to do and how much actual time you have to do things when you know you're on a crunch. And some days I wish I could remember that on a day-to-day basis.
Is it Pareto's principle? I always feel that.
I don't know what it's one of those principles though, but I don't understand why I have such a hard time living life like that all the time, because it'll be so so satisfying. Bro, you get weeks and weeks of work done in a couple of days, and it just shows you how much you can do when you have the right intention, the right goal, and the right thing to look forward to, So I'm looking forward to that. Again, unfortunately, in being completely honest, it's just I wish our business had that one person that is me, so that when I leave, we could still grow and onboard new properties. Because again, I'm super grateful that we have the ability to go away for a month, but I'm also very understanding that I'm not yet at the point where I can just leave for a month and continuously onboard properties. So I'm feeling a certain kind of way about that.
So it flat lines, it's good, but it's not going to grow.
Correct. Yeah. And the thing is this, right? Is an understanding that in our evolution as business owners, this is the next little bit that gives you the ultimate freedom, right? Mm-hmm. Because if not, you can only continue, you can only grow while you're here. And again, the team is amazing. The team doesn't need me for anything else, just for the growth. But the growth is needed to support the team and to grow the team.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Is that balance of you know what I mean? And so it's going back, recharging. And it also I find it so funny, the feeling guilty about being I really shouldn't leave for a month. That's too long. There's so much momentum. And then you're but then it's life. You know what I mean? I also we don't work this hard to not do, this is why we do it, right? 100%. So that's kind of where I've been at, man. And but very grateful, super excited. You know what I mean? It's going to be good. It's going to be needed. What about you? You enjoying your new house?
Yeah, we're not moved in yet. We're getting there. Probably be 2 more weeks. It's close. It's close to being done. So that's been moving along. Really excited for that. And just had the photo shoot today at the new hotel. Had 3 rooms staged for photos so we could start the marketing. Mm-hmm. And hopefully launch the website next week to start taking bookings. Ideally mid-October, because that's our high season up here in Salem, Mass. But we'll see. Mm-hmm. When you do the commercial stuff, you're kind of at the mercy, well, even residential, but more so on the commercial side, you're at the mercy of all the inspectors and everything else. And it's just tough to give a definitive deadline, but I'm optimistic. It's looking really good. I'm loving the way that it's turning out.
No, so, the girls did a good job. Yeah. It looks incredible.
Yeah.
And the thing with the licensing, it's so true. It's so much both on the residential and the commercial side, because we had a house that it's been pretty much ready for the last month, and we're just waiting on just final inspections, and there is nothing we can do. And our owner is when are we doing this inspection? I'm bro, we paid for it, schedule, everything is submitted, all the documents is clear, but until they call us to schedule it, there's not much we can do. And so when you're going through underwrite your numbers, both on a commercial or residential property, just put these things in. Never estimate that you can go live in, even if you're it's just a little lipstick on here, we can go live in a month. You can go live in 2 months. If you go live in a month, then you're like, awesome, surprise. But then you're not like hurting because you can't control it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
100%. 100%. Well, I'm excited for today's guests. They've got a really cool concept that I'm excited to dive into. So today on the show, we've got Sean and Landon Wilkinson. They currently have a portfolio of several short-term rentals between Washington and Montana. They found STRs through house flipping and after purchasing multifamily properties across the country. And through owning and managing their own STRs for the last 8 years, they came up with an idea of Hostshare. And Hostshare is a platform that allows owners and hosts of STRs to share last-minute unbooked nights in order to travel for only the cost of cleaning fees. I want to elaborate on that, but I'm going to let them share their story first. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Glad you guys are here.
How's it going? Thank you for having us.
How's it going, guys?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So let's walk us back. First off, how did you guys get into real estate? And then we'll talk about Hostshare after that.
But yeah, our journey sort of started, we were in a band together when I was 16 and Sean was 14. And so I started a painting contracting company to basically pay for the band habit. And Sean is the bass player, I was the guitar player. And Sean was also our first employee, coincidentally. And that was a long time ago now. And pretty much Sean moved into another city not too far from Yakima, and I'll let him share his stuff. But I basically grew the painting company, and then we started doing some house flipping, and then, you know, got into owning more and more, and then fourplex. Then we ended up jumping up to 100 units in Oklahoma, one property, and then we ended up getting another 91 unit deal there. So we, up until about 2021, had about 240 units in Oklahoma, and then basically took advantage of the market conditions and exited those properties, and then basically turned a lot of the energy into, we had done short-term rentals for years, but one or two type thing, and then we ended up buying a commercial business storage property, and then 2 other short-term rentals. And so basically since 2020 or so, we've been managing for ourselves. And of course, the broader portfolio is shrunk now, and we're focusing on Hostshare. So yeah, it's a bit of my background.
Yeah, and I at 17, I got into real estate with my first deal. I bought a postage stamp lot with 2 mobile homes on it, and you know, it was creative financing. So I put $5,000 down that I'd saved up, and you know, I experienced cash flow for the first time. You know, where I was renting both sides for $700, and realized at the end of each month, it's like, man, this is, you know, there's $400 extra here. That's pretty cool. And so I was able to keep that for a few years. And then I also started buying and selling flip houses, and, you know, partnering with people. And I did that for probably, you know, 10 or 11 kind of good sized flips. I really cut my teeth on the construction side. And then I started just really diving into creative finance deals, because I was only 20 at the time, and was just trying to, like, how do I, you know, without credit, without much money, how do I get into like a lot more of this? And so partnered on several deals, started a management company, and then just started buying rental properties. And then that's kind of what, you know, the first house I lived in, my wife and I actually, we lived in the house, and it had a basement to it. And so I was like, man, if we were able to, you know, we lived in an area, it's called Walla Walla, Washington. It's wine country here. I was like, if we're able to, you know, Airbnb the top, and then we created stairs to the downstairs, and, you know, live down there on the weekends, we could pay our mortgage doing that potentially. And so we did that, and it, you know, and it worked. And, you know, and we were able to make an extra $1,800 a month doing that. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And so that was kind of the start of getting into short-term rentals. And, you know, and since then we've got a couple still in Walla Walla, a couple here in Yakima, and, you know, and then the rest of our portfolio is still long-term rentals. But that's what's given us kind of the flexibility, like you were saying in the beginning there. Like, it's given us the flexibility to kind of get out of that business, and, you know, and start kind of full dive into Hostshare. And so that's kind of the background.
Sweet. So let's talk about Hostshare. So how'd you come up with this, and what exactly is it?
Yeah, so Sean and I are both pilots, and I would say that kind of the idea started about maybe 3 years ago to germinate a little bit, where we went together and we bought a plane with another friend. And so we each put in, a third, and now we pay, a third of the hangar costs and the annual inspection costs, all these things. And like, I don't think there's maybe been one time in the 3 years where the schedules have overlapped or we've had to like not use it because, somebody, like, just even with 3 owners, the shared use never really impacts the accessibility of the airplane. And so it's kind of like, I had friends who owned planes for years, and it was always so expensive and all this stuff. And it's like, well, man, if you like, even if you had all the money in the world, like, it's better for the equipment. Anyways, better asset utilization is kind of what the idea started from. But we were considering earlier this year looking at buying a sailboat, and we live central Washington. And so the thought was, well, if we buy a sailboat over like in the Puget Sound or, San Juan, we're probably only realistically going to be using it for like a month out of the year, like just the realities of life and whatnot. And so it was like, well, maybe we could do another shared ownership thing. And then we got talking, well, it sure be nice if there was a way to have a platform where you could have, you easily organize all the finances and the reporting and all of the scheduling in one place for like an asset sharing, program. And so the idea sort of was going to be called Pod Life. And you basically have a pod, kind of like whales that you travel in, and you have, access to the shared assets and stuff. And so then we kind of kept workshopping it, because airplane sharing is across like a broader group, and like all of these things. Better asset utilization was sort of what's the simplest way to do that. And then we got talking about our vacancy rates, and across Airbnb, I think there's 6 million listings. Half of those on average sit empty. Well, there's a 50% occupancy average across the listings on Airbnb. So that's at an average of $300 per night. That works out to $330 billion a year, and basically wasted, lost revenue. And so, we got to think about that. It's like, well, what's the real issue? And it's, well, you can home share, but then you're going to give up revenue. So like platforms like, the ones that have been in existence for a long time, Home Exchange or Third Home or any of those ones, are going to pretty much eliminate short-term rental owners, because they're requiring you to give up revenue nights most likely. Whereas ours, it's being last minute, 5 days in advance, is basically the highest probability of not losing revenue from that booking. So you can explain if I missed anything.
Yeah, well, the main thing is that you're trading vacant nights that were going to go unbooked anyways for nights you can go and travel. So if you've got a last minute vacancy, you're able to, you might have someone come and stay there, but in turn you get 3 weeks of free travel a year. And it's not dependent on if you give that, it's not dependent on if you provide the service to someone else, but you actually just get that by being on the platform. And then what we do is we track their, calendar. So if there is that vacancy within, 5 days, then it's available on Hostshare as well as Airbnb.
So it's like your guys' avatar more you guys, like in terms of like owners trying to like hack their way to like cheaper vacations? Because it doesn't really sound like something that like a management company would so much like be on necessarily. Or like, where do you guys see like who's your avatar?
I definitely think we are a perfect avatar for this, especially when we're getting off the ground, because to start off, we're going to have maybe a handful of, a couple thousand listings, worldwide. And so you have to be able to be more, able to travel on a whim. And as pilots, for instance, we're always at mercy of weather, right? So like, if weather's good, it's like, all right, we'll go last minute and we'll stay in this place. And, so it might be more of like that adventurous type person to begin, because they'll see an awesome listing that's like a couple hours away. And it's like, oh, sweet. Like, this is available tonight, or this is available in a couple of days. Let's go. In the future, though, when you've got a scale, of, several thousand listings, the hope would be that it really just changes the way that people, or at least hosts, look at traveling, because then they can say, I'm going to wait till, 5 nights before and see because most likely if you've got 500 listings on Hostshare in one city, more than likely one of those is going to be, open the night you're planning on going somewhere. So I think that in time it will switch, just kind of change some travel patterns for hosts. And
I mean, as it goes from like early adopters right now being opportunistic, like I'm going to go because it's available right now, versus when it's like is adopted as, a much larger platform, they can travel wherever and expect to find one available. Yeah.
So when you're on the platform, you can do you get a sense of how many properties are in certain markets? So like, if I want to take my family to San Francisco, whatever, and it's like a last minute thing, it's like, all right, they have 25 properties. I'm just throwing out a number in San Francisco. What are the odds that I'll be able to grab like a week there? And basically that's the idea. It's like, if I'm say a smaller host and I've got a couple properties and it's like, oh, this would be cool. I'm that stereotypical like traveler, love Airbnb type person.
Totally.
I can put my property on this platform. And if I don't have my property booked in the next 5 days, somebody in theory could book it. They cover the cleaning fee, so it's not going to cost me money necessarily. I'm not going to come out of pocket for the cleaning. But then I get up to 3 weeks vacation at somebody else's spot.
Yeah, so it's any home on the platform too. So we have places that are $2,000 a night, and they might share 2 nights out of the year. But if you're like, again, opportunistic and you're willing to be kind of flexible, the nights you share, may not even get used, and you might have access to 3 weeks of $20,000+ worth of travel value that you're able to get from it.
You're really strategic.
You're strategic, yeah.
So explain that to us again. So let's say, as soon as I get on the platform, I get 3 weeks. But then in terms of like how much of my property I have to give up, that's not based on the same 3 weeks. It's based on the nightly rate of what my property is worth. So if I have a property that is like $1,000 a night property, I don't have to give 3 weeks worth of it.
Yep. Yeah. And you're probably given maybe six nights a year if it's $1,000 a night.
There's a calculator we have on the website. If you're curious, that under the how it works section, you can plug in your nightly rate. So you can see exactly, what kind of a share, how many nights you'd be sharing.
And there is not a limit. So like you don't have, so if you have a property that's $250, $300 a night, you're not capped in terms of like what property you can go and stay to. And you don't have a minimum night. So like if I have a property that's $1,000 a night, is there a minimum of like always at least 2 nights, or how does that work?
Meaning like a minimum length of stay?
Yes.
So if your property is $1,000 a night, most likely just because of the cleaning fee, I would assume people are more, but I don't think there'll be a minimum. Like it'll probably just be if somebody can grab one night, especially because those are going to be so if you put $1,000 night property and that's 4 nights a year, it's shared based on the current average rates on the platform. So yeah, putting it down to a minimum might be limiting.
Interesting. So
yeah,
how does like, let's say there's two guys are listening now, or 2 girls that are listening now, brothers, cousin, whatever, and they have an idea of like creating a SaaS and creating like an OTA, because this is kind of an OTA. Where did you guys go first? Like what does this process look like? What are actionable steps that people can take if they're like, oh, I want to create an OTA for people that like flying airplanes into Montana? Like what does that look like?
You're talking in terms of basically any kind of a software or
how did you guys, like, since it didn't sound like you have any background in like OTA, web development, app development, anything like that. How do you make it happen?
We started off with the concept, and then basically we were vetting different development agencies to assist with the app development, or the web app development rather. But my brother-in-law has had multiple tech-related startups that then his company is called Blender. and they had their in-house development team, and we were chatting about it, and he really caught the vision for the company. He's had short-term rentals, and so basically he brought in his entire team. So pretty much the company's made up of about 11 of us now, and we brought in some,
overseas help,
some contract help, but pretty much the lion's share is being on his team. And so their development expertise is what's making it possible in that regard.
Yeah, definitely not working in that lane, because that was we realized really quickly that was not our strong suit.
No, yeah, because to me that's one of the main things that you can think that it's super cool to create an OTA, and our
it's everything.
Friend Rachel is creating one for like midterm rentals, and I'm like, it's a whole business, and like it's like, unless you know what you're doing, like I'm like, that to me would feel like quite a bit of a challenge.
One of the things, if somebody was listening and had an idea and wanted to do something, Michael Fisk and Devin Linder are our partners, and basically, I think it's really critical, especially if you're resource constrained financially, or you're trying to get something off the ground, kind of shoestring. Finding somebody who catches the same vision but has that skill set and giving them equity in the company is the best thing, I think you can do.
Absolutely.
Get your values aligned and have a real understanding of just ideally, it's somebody you've known for more than a few months. Like, I think it's really good if you, with any business partnership, it carries a degree of risk, but
especially as brothers.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things you can do is just get somebody aligned and motivated by the success of the business, and not just a contract, hired gun type of a thing.
Yeah.
That's based on our experience.
Yeah. So I always love to talk to founders, just because I always find it so fascinating. Like, what's the vision that you guys have for where you want to take this?
I would say, a big thing that's that we see as this being kind of like, if I was to define like something we're really trying to like lead in, or a new industry that's just we feel like we're kind of on the cusp of is obviously the sharing economy is something that's really been taking off with pioneers like Airbnb and Uber. But what I think is interesting is like both of those models are so incredible, and they have their place, of course, and but it's all provider to consumer, right? So it's like it's all going to be transactional, cash, you're paying for something. And so this idea of it's almost it's a bartering thing where it's provider to provider. And in a currency that you guys are trading,
value exchange.
A like item. So it's a STR for STR, but it's globally, rather than like what traditional bartering is, which it would be like maybe a non or a perishable item, that is local, but it's actually global. So I like that concept of the space that we're in is this provider to provider kind of barter, industry or
economy.
It falls under that umbrella, and which I think is different from a lot of things I've seen, and it's because of that. A lot of like the hurdles that we've had to get past. Like, how do you, for instance, like how do you have any sort of accountability with trading something? How do you make sure somebody else is going to provide back to you once you provide them something? And how we do that is through the calendar. And if they want to have revenue nights, they're not gonna block out their calendar last minute. But that's our way of making sure it's available on Hostshare as well. If it is available. And so I think that's a really interesting, an interesting industry that I haven't really seen many other companies dive into. So
it sometimes takes some education or communication for hosts to understand, and once they grasp it, most times people really get excited about it. But it's not something that's really easy to convey. it's a new way of thinking about it, and the kind of the evolution of the sharing economy. I think we're sort of the next logical step. A lot of people are like, man, I can't believe nobody else has done this, and hadn't thought of this earlier. And it's an interesting thing because, like, as you guys know, Airbnb has gotten, has gone through some public, criticism over some of the higher commissions and, cleaning fees or price transparency. There's, counties and regulations being very harsh on STRs. And so there's this kind of pushback as the industry has grown so rapidly. There's been some learning curves, I know, along the way for them. And in many ways, I think what we're doing, is counter-cyclical in that, when cash dries up, this is one way that people can still make use of their asset to provide some real value to them. And then also, like, the other thing that's really interesting is that because you're not charging nightly rates, there's no commissions or taxes that, like, you couldn't really put a price on a lot of these things because there's no money changing hands. And so it's just one more way that it eliminates extra cost and makes things more mobile, I guess. Yeah.
How big do you think you guys will take this? Like, what's the vision for how big you'll go?
I think we'll see that so basically November, we're on track to do 1,000 for sort of right after our beta. We should have about 1,000 hosts on board, and that's primarily the US, Costa Rica, and then the UK. And so my hope and our hope is that we can do a 20% onboarding month over month for the first year, which would bring us to about 7,000. And if you have 7,000, I think it becomes less of an early adopter thing at that point and more of a network effect that begins to happen, where you have a lot more broad market appeal to, people seeing more traditional traveler, stereotypes. And so I think that would be the first 12 months. I just consider that a success if we could grow to the 7,000 in that first 12 months.
So when did it go live? Just so I'm clear. So you guys have 1,000 hosts on there. When did you go live?
We have pre-beta signups right now. So the beta will be live in about a month. And that first 1,000 is pretty much going to be without cost to anybody. It's going to be, that's part of why we're doing this now, is to get people who are interested in learning and growing with us along the way a little bit, and, willing to put up with some platform bugs in the mix of launching. Yeah,
that's not bad. I mean, shit, 1,000 houses and you guys haven't like formally launched yet. I mean, that's shows you guys are gaining some traction. I think if it does take off, I can see how this would apply to, like, immediately I go to, like, I'm a car guy. So, like, I've got some nice cars. It's like, okay, well, if I let somebody, it'd be a little dicier with cars, but if I let somebody take my baby out and then I can go grab, I don't know, a 911 Turbo S or whatever, for a day. I think that same thing with boats, Freedom Boat Club, a little bit different, but I could see that model kind of working as the sharing economy evolves over time. So I think it's a really cool concept. I think, like E said, it's the perfect concept for somebody they bought a vacation house, they want to rent it to pay for itself, and they like to travel.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, cool. I'll give 3 weeks. This thing's going to pay for itself. I don't need to make a ton of money on it, and I'll get to go stay somewhere else. We want to travel. Mm-hmm. I just took my son's friend from school and his family. They stayed with us up in New Hampshire. And the thing that he brought up was, I'd love to buy one of these, but then I'm going to feel tied that when we go away, I feel like I'm going to feel guilty if I don't go stay here.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody like that, this is perfect for. You know what I mean?
And to add to that, that's one reason why, like, management companies, for instance, we've gotten some feedback from management companies saying, like, because we thought it would be a big hang up on their end, because it's like, this is non-revenue nights, last minute. And we're like, so how do you incentivize that? But what's interesting too is that they mentioned that they say, like, well, if people don't feel like they have to come back to their house, every year, if they live in, say, Boston, but they own a house in Orlando, they're always going to Orlando because they feel like they have to go there. And then those nights aren't revenue nights for that property anyways. And so, but they book those in advance, and it could be prime season and all that. And so from a management standpoint, if they had the ability to go anywhere, anywhere close to Boston, or, Massachusetts, wherever, then they can go to those places for free essentially, and not necessarily feel like they have to go back to the place that the management company holds, And so that's an interesting concept too. And to add to what Landon was saying a little bit ago, I just was thinking about this, but we've got friends and family that have also owned hotels. And, one thing that added to the vision of Hostshare was that idea of when you're a Marriott member, you get to go, last minute to the hotel, the friends and family like discount essentially. And you can get these upgrades last minute and really good pricing. And so we also saw it as like, this is a cool opportunity to be like a club for short-term rental hosts, and where they all kind of have this
shared sense of responsibility and community, I suppose.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. This is very interesting. I haven't seen anybody else come up with this. So kudos to you guys for, kind of spearheading this new home sharing niche within itself. So before we get into the last question, where can folks learn more about you guys and Hostshare and everything that you guys got going on?
The website is just hostshare.co. So that's going to be where, if you're most interested in Hostshare itself, if you're interested in tracking with Sean and I, it's just Landon Wilkinson and Sean Wilkinson on any of the platforms. But probably a lot more interesting to follow the website than Sean and I individually.
Yeah, just go on there.
The website looks good. I was just poking around on there. It looks cool.
Yeah, and you guys seem to have an interesting life, so I feel like following you guys as well will be quite fun between the sailboat and the airplanes and everything else you guys going on.
But yeah, if we survive through the launch of Hostshare, then yeah.
Love it. Well, the last question we ask all of our guests is, what is your number one secret to success with short-term rentals?
First? Yeah, I might take
I would think we've done a number of different kinds. We've had, in our apartments, we created one Airbnb space. We did, like a traditional house, like a single family residence, we did an Airbnb out of. And by far the best return on investment, I think this is pretty widely accepted now, but when we first did it, it wasn't as clear, is that that size, that 2-bedroom, 1-bath with a really unique aspect to it. We did a container home, and then we also did a renovation of this 100-year-old barn into an Airbnb. And by far, just the ROI and the enjoyment for me setting up and doing a short-term rental that has something that's sort of, it's not just like your suburban house, it's got something, a unique aspect to it. And I think that has become pretty common knowledge, especially through COVID and whatnot, that seems to become, these tiny A-frame cabins and what's performing and the best return on investment. But yeah, the container home, super interesting to build. I enjoyed that aspect, and it's done far outperformed, much larger houses with more expensive, traditional aspects to them.
Yeah. I would say don't skimp on the last 5% of your investment, really if you can stand out, just that last little bit makes so much of a difference. And I heard from a manager once, he said you've got the payer, and then you've got the parasites of any stay. So you've got the person that's paying, and then you've got the people that come along with them. And so those the secondary rooms and all that where kids go, really it doesn't mean a whole lot with how your place performs. It's you invest in the areas,
master bedroom.
That master bedroom, those areas that the payer is most interested by, and it's not going to be exactly what the kids all want. So I think those are the two things that come to mind. But
okay, cool. Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate you guys coming on here. As always, I love talking to founders, especially unique new concepts, just getting an understanding of the thought process and where it came from. So excited to see where you guys take this. And again, congrats for getting into 1,000 houses, as part of the beta. That's freaking awesome. So shout out to you guys. For the listeners, go check out hostshare.co. We'll have all the links down in the show notes. And thanks again, as always, for tuning in, folks. Have an amazing week, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.